Why do many people in Hindu tradition say that even powerful gods respect the gaze of Shani Dev? Why is Shani often feared more than many other deities, even though he is described as a symbol of justice rather than evil? And could the difficult periods we face in life carry the same kind of lessons that Shani is believed to bring? These questions have been part of spiritual discussions in India for centuries, and they appear in many traditional stories, philosophical teachings, and astrology texts. In Hindu belief and mythology, Shani Dev is known as the deity connected with karma, justice, patience, and discipline. In traditional Indian astrology, he is also associated with the planet Saturn, which moves slowly across the sky. Ancient astrologers noticed this slow movement and linked it symbolically with ideas like delay, endurance, and long-term consequences. These ideas appear in classical texts such as the Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, a well-known work on Vedic astrology, and in mythological stories found in the Shiva Purana and other Puranic literature. It is important to note that mythology and astrology represent cultural and spiritual traditions. They are not scientific explanations of planets or destiny. Still, these stories have helped many people think about responsibility, patience, and the results of their actions. Many popular stories say that even powerful gods respect Shani's influence. Scholars often explain that these stories are symbolic ways of teaching an important idea. No one, no matter how powerful, is above the law of cause and effect. In everyday life, we see similar patterns. Hard work often brings results slowly. Dishonest actions may bring short-term gain, but later create problems. In this way, the stories of Shani are often understood as moral lessons about accountability and growth. In this video, we will carefully explore the meaning behind these stories, the philosophical idea of karma, the myths about Shani Dev, and the real-life lessons people draw from them. We will also look at why fear is only one part of the story, and why many traditions also describe Shani as a teacher and a protector of justice. If you enjoy thoughtful explorations of mythology, philosophy, and life lessons, consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel so you don't miss future discussions. By the end of this journey, you may see these ancient stories in a calmer and clearer way, not as tales meant to scare people, but as reflections on how patience, responsibility, and integrity shape our lives. In many Hindu traditions, Shani Dev is described as a powerful symbol of justice, responsibility, and the results of human actions. People often speak about Shani with a mixture of fear and respect. This feeling does not come from the idea that Shani is evil or cruel. Instead, it comes from the belief that Shani represents the law of karma, the simple idea that actions bring consequences over time. In many stories and teachings, Shani is not shown as someone who punishes people randomly. Rather, he represents a natural balance in the universe, where good actions and harmful actions both return to the person who created them. These ideas appear in several traditional Hindu texts, including stories connected to the Shiva Purana and other Puranic writings. These texts are part of religious and cultural tradition, and they are meant to teach moral ideas rather than scientific explanations. Shani is also connected with the planet Saturn in traditional Indian astrology. Ancient observers noticed that Saturn moves slowly across the sky compared to many other visible planets. Because of this slow movement, astrologers began to associate Saturn with patience, delay, discipline, and long periods of testing. This connection between Shani and Saturn is discussed in classical astrology works such as the Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra. It is important to remember that astrology is a cultural belief system and not a scientific method for predicting events. However, its ideas have influenced stories, art, and spiritual thinking for many centuries. One reason Shani is often feared is because people naturally fear the results of their mistakes. In real life, consequences can take time to appear. A person who ignores their health for years may later face illness. Someone who breaks trust may later struggle to rebuild relationships. These everyday experiences reflect the same lesson that the stories of Shani try to express. Actions create results, sometimes slowly, but often very clearly. This does not mean every event in life is caused by past actions. Life is complex, and many factors influence outcomes. Still, the concept of responsibility remains important. When people look at Shani through this deeper meaning, the fear around him becomes easier to understand. Instead of seeing Shani as a frightening figure, many teachers describe him as a reminder that patience, honesty, and discipline slowly build a stable life. The slow movement of Saturn in the sky became a symbol for this slow but steady process of growth. In that sense, Shani represents not only justice, but also the opportunity to improve through careful choices and long-term effort. In Hindu mythology, the story of the birth of Shani Dev is often used to explain why this deity is connected with deep spiritual power and strict justice. According to traditional stories found in texts such as the Shiva Purana and other Puranic literature, Shani is described as the son of Surya, the sun god, and Chaya, who is often described as the shadow or reflection of Surya's first wife. These stories belong to religious and cultural traditions and are understood as symbolic narratives that teach spiritual lessons rather than historical events. In many versions of the story, Chaya is said to have spent long periods in meditation and devotion while she was carrying Shani. Because of this intense spiritual practice, the child was believed to be born with strong spiritual energy and a deep connection to discipline and justice. Some myths describe Shani as having a dark appearance from birth. In traditional storytelling, this detail is not meant to judge appearance, but to symbolize seriousness, depth, and the power of austerity. Ancient storytellers often used physical descriptions as symbols to communicate ideas about personality or destiny. In this case, Shani's dark form represents focus, detachment, and the ability to see the truth behind actions. These symbolic meanings appear in different commentaries and interpretations of the Puranic stories. It is also said, in some legends, that when Shani first opened his eyes, his powerful gaze affected even his father, Surya. Scholars often explain that this story is not meant to be taken literally, but instead represents a deeper idea. The law of karma affects everyone equally, no matter how powerful they are. When we look beyond the mythological details, the birth story of Shani carries an important lesson about life. Many people who bring strong change into the world are not always welcomed or understood at first. Throughout history, thinkers, teachers, and reformers have sometimes faced rejection before their ideas were accepted. In a similar symbolic way, Shani's story suggests that true strength often comes from discipline, patience, and deep reflection. The myths surrounding his birth encourage people to look beyond surface judgments and focus on character, responsibility, and long-term growth. These lessons help explain why Shani is remembered not only as a strict judge of karma, but also as a powerful teacher of patience and inner strength. In many traditional stories of Hindu mythology, the power of Shani Dev is often explained through symbolic encounters with other well-known deities. These stories appear in different forms in Puranic literature and later commentaries. One commonly discussed theme is that even great gods show respect towards Shani's influence. For example, stories sometimes mention figures such as Lord Shiva or Vishnu in connection with Shani's role in maintaining balance and justice. It is important to understand that these stories are not historical events, but symbolic teaching tools. Religious scholars often explain that such narratives were created to communicate an idea that was very important in Hindu philosophy. The rule of karma applies to everyone. The idea is simple but powerful. Actions, whether good or harmful, eventually create results. In these mythological traditions, Shani's gaze is often described as something that brings the truth of a person's actions to light. The story form makes the idea easy to remember, but the deeper message is philosophical. In many Hindu teachings, karma means that every action, thought, and intention contributes to future outcomes. Some effects may appear quickly, while others may take years to become visible. Ancient storytellers used powerful characters and dramatic scenes to explain this idea in ways people could easily understand. When a story says that even divine beings are careful around Shani, it is a way of saying that no one is completely free from the natural law of cause and effect. This lesson is not limited to mythology. We can see similar patterns in everyday life and in history. A person may gain wealth or power through unfair actions, but over time, those choices often create problems such as loss of trust, damaged reputation, or legal consequences. Many historians point out that leaders who ignored ethical responsibility often faced serious downfall later in life. On the other hand, people who act with patience, honesty, and discipline may not see quick rewards, but their work often builds a stronger and more stable future. These real-world patterns reflect the same idea that the mythological stories about Shani try to express. For this reason, many spiritual teachers say the fear connected to Shani is actually a reminder of responsibility. The stories encourage people to think carefully about their choices and to understand that justice, even if it seems slow, is part of the natural order described in Hindu philosophy. In traditional Hindu astrology, one period that is often discussed in connection with Shani Dev is known as Sade Sati. According to classical astrology traditions, this period happens when the planet Saturn moves through certain positions around a person's moon sign in their birth chart. Astrologers say this cycle usually lasts about 7.5 years, which is why the name Sade Sati literally refers to that length of time. Descriptions of this period appear in traditional astrology works such as the Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, which is one of the well-known classical texts used by practitioners of Vedic astrology. However, it is important to state clearly that astrology is a cultural and spiritual belief system, and its predictions are not scientifically proven. Different astrologers may also interpret the same planetary positions in different ways. In popular belief, Sade Sati is often associated with challenges, delays, or periods of testing in life. Because of this reputation, many people feel anxious when they hear that they are entering this phase. Yet many scholars and spiritual teachers suggest that the deeper meaning of this idea is not simply about fear or punishment. Instead, it is often explained as a symbolic way of describing times in life when people are pushed to develop patience, discipline, and responsibility. Just as Saturn moves slowly across the sky, the lessons linked with Shani are believed to unfold slowly, sometimes through difficult experiences that require careful thought and steady effort. Even outside astrology, many people can recognize that certain periods of life feel heavier or more demanding than others. someone might face financial struggle, career uncertainty, health challenges, or emotional stress. While astrology connects these experiences to planetary movements, psychology and life experience show that difficult phases are a natural part of human growth. Many successful individuals have spoken about long periods of failure or delay before reaching stability or achievement. These experiences often teach resilience, careful planning, and emotional strength. For this reason, some interpreters of Shani symbolism say that the idea of Sade Sati can be understood as a reminder that growth often happens through effort and patience. Instead of seeing these years only as a time of fear, they can also be viewed as an opportunity to build stronger habits, clearer priorities, and deeper self-understanding. In that sense, the traditional stories about Shani and the teachings of astrology try to express a larger message. Life sometimes slows us down so that we can learn lessons that quick success might never teach. Many teachings connected with Shani Dev become easier to understand when we look at everyday life. In Hindu philosophy, the idea of karma often refers to a simple principle: actions create results over time. This idea appears in several spiritual traditions of India and is discussed in texts such as the Bhagavad Gita, where the focus is on responsible action and ethical behavior. Although mythology often uses powerful stories to explain karma, the basic idea can also be seen through ordinary human experiences. When people build habits over many years, those habits often shape their future in clear ways. For example, someone who spends years learning skills, studying carefully, and working with discipline usually creates more opportunities than someone who avoids effort or responsibility. A common real-life situation that reflects this idea is the feeling that success takes too long. Many people work hard, but still feel that progress is slow. This experience is sometimes compared with the symbolism of Shani, who is linked in astrology with the slow-moving planet Saturn. The slow movement of Saturn became a symbol for patience and long-term effort in traditional belief systems. While astrology itself is not a scientific method for predicting personal events, the symbolism has influenced how people think about persistence. In many careers, achievements come after long periods of preparation. Athletes train for years before reaching major competitions. Scientists may spend decades researching before making an important discovery. Entrepreneurs often face repeated failure before building a stable business. These examples show how steady effort slowly shapes results. Another important lesson often linked with karma is responsibility for personal choices. Financial mistakes, broken trust in relationships, or unhealthy habits can create difficulties later in life. These outcomes are not always caused by destiny or cosmic forces. Many of them come from decisions people make every day. Psychology research also shows that long-term habits strongly influence health, relationships, and career success. This idea closely reflects the moral teaching found in karma philosophy. Small actions repeated over time can build powerful results. Because of this connection, many teachers say the symbolism of Shani is not meant to frighten people, but to encourage awareness. The stories remind listeners that even when life feels slow or unfair, patience and ethical choices still matter. Progress may not appear immediately, but consistent effort often leads to lasting stability. In this way, the lessons connected with Shani encourage people to focus less on fear and more on responsible actions that shape the future step by step. Although many people speak about Shani Dev with fear, many Hindu traditions also describe him as a protector of fairness and balance. In mythology and spiritual teaching, Shani is not only the one who brings consequences for harmful actions, he is also believed to support those who live with honesty, patience, and discipline. This balanced view appears in several traditional discussions of Shani in Hindu religious literature and temple traditions. The central idea is simple. If a person acts with integrity, there is less reason to fear the results of karma. In that sense, Shani represents the stability that comes from living responsibly, rather than the fear of punishment. Across India, there are many places where people express devotion to Shani and ask for guidance during difficult periods of life. One well-known place is the Shani Shingnapur temple, which is widely known in connection with Shani worship. Devotees visit this temple to pray for patience, justice, and protection from unfair situations. Cultural studies and travel research often mention this temple because it has a long tradition connected with Shani devotion, while beliefs about divine protection are matters of faith rather than scientific proof. These practices show how many people understand Shani not only as a strict judge, but also as a guardian of moral order. The deeper message behind this belief is closely linked to the value of discipline. Many teachers explain that Shani's symbolism encourages people to build strong habits that protect them from future problems. For example, someone who practices honesty in business may lose short-term advantages compared with those who take unfair shortcuts. However, over time, honesty builds trust with customers, partners, and colleagues. Trust is one of the most valuable forms of protection a person can have in society. In the same way, patience in personal relationships often builds stronger bonds than quick reactions based on anger or pride. This idea also connects with everyday examples of resilience. A worker who continues to act with integrity in a difficult workplace may slowly gain respect and leadership opportunities. A student who studies carefully year after year may eventually achieve knowledge and stability that quick success cannot provide. These patterns show why Shani is sometimes described as both strict and supportive. The discipline he symbolizes can feel difficult in the moment, but over time, it creates a foundation of fairness and reliability. For this reason, many spiritual teachers say that the real message of Shani is balance. Fear may be the first reaction people feel, but understanding the deeper meaning leads to a different view. Shani's symbolism encourages individuals to live with patience, honesty, and careful choices, knowing that such actions gradually create protection and stability in life. As we reach the final part of this journey, the story of Shani Dev invites us to think about a deeper question that has been discussed in Hindu philosophy for thousands of years. How much of life is shaped by destiny, and how much is shaped by our own actions? Different traditions offer different explanations, but many Hindu teachings try to balance these two ideas rather than choosing only one. In texts such as the Bhagavad Gita, the focus is often placed on performing one's duties with honesty and dedication, while accepting that some outcomes may remain outside human control. This balance between effort and acceptance is one of the most important ideas connected with karma. In the stories and symbols linked with Shani, this balance becomes easier to understand. Shani is often seen as a teacher who represents discipline, patience, and accountability. The connection with the slow-moving planet Saturn became a powerful symbol for this teaching. Because Saturn moves slowly across the sky, ancient observers linked it with long-term cycles of effort and consequence. This connection appears in traditional astrology texts like the Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra, although it is important to remember that astrology interpretations are part of cultural belief and not scientific prediction. Still, the symbolism has influenced how many people think about time, patience, and personal growth. When people hear stories about Shani, fear is often the first reaction. Yet many spiritual teachers explain that the deeper lesson is not fear, but awareness. The stories encourage individuals to understand that actions matter, choices matter, and habits matter. A person cannot control every situation in life, but they can control how they respond. Choosing honesty instead of deception, patience instead of anger, and effort instead of avoidance slowly shapes a different future. This idea is not limited to religious belief. Similar lessons appear in psychology and ethics, where long-term behavior patterns are known to influence personal success and well-being. In this way, the symbolism of Shani can transform fear into wisdom. Instead of seeing destiny as something fixed and unchangeable, the teachings encourage people to view life as a process where present actions continue to shape future outcomes. Difficult times may still appear, but they can become opportunities to grow stronger and wiser. The final message of these ancient stories is simple but powerful. Patience, responsibility, and integrity may move slowly, but they build a foundation that lasts far longer than quick success or temporary advantage. After exploring the stories, teachings, and symbolism of Shani Dev, it becomes clear that the fear surrounding him is only part of the picture. In Hindu mythology and astrology, Shani is seen as a powerful reminder that every action has consequences and that patience, discipline, and responsibility are essential in life. While mythology describes his gaze as strong and his influence as serious, the deeper meaning is about moral balance, accountability, and personal growth. Texts such as the Shiva Purana, the Bhagavata Purana, and astrology works like the Brihat Parashara Hora Shastra explain these lessons through stories, symbols, and planetary connections. Though it is important to remember that astrology represents cultural belief rather than scientific fact. The stories of Shani also teach that difficult times in life, which may feel challenging or unfair, often carry important lessons. Real-life experiences, such as long periods of study, consistent work, or the consequences of decisions, reflect the same principle that Shani represents. Actions lead to results, and growth often takes time. Whether someone faces obstacles in relationships, career, or personal goals, patience, honesty, and steady effort tend to create stronger, lasting outcomes. In this way, the symbolism of Shani encourages people to focus on what they can control, their choices, actions, and habits, rather than being overwhelmed by fear or uncertainty. Finally, the stories encourage seeing fear as a teacher rather than an enemy. Shani's symbolism reminds us that life's challenges are opportunities to learn, improve, and become stronger. By living with integrity, responsibility, and patience, people not only reduce negative consequences, but also create protection and stability in their lives. The lessons of Shani Dev are timeless, showing that long-term effort, ethical choices, and careful reflection shape a better future. Understanding this helps transform fear into wisdom, showing that even the most difficult phases of life can guide us toward growth, balance, and meaningful success.